Well, one, two. Hey, everybody. This is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and we also have
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
now we have something that's been going on called the Three Jokers. It's by Jeff Johns. He's back. He got Jason Fabak on there. They're classic team. They've been well. It wasn't no. It was actually Gary Frank, but they did stuff in the whole before the whole Doomsday Clock. They had that stuff going on. So they had this cool thing before that he just got off on. Now he's doing the Three Jokers. What the hell is this about? Cal, do you know?
Yeah, I know a little.
Then tell us. Tell us if we should, even by idea, something that we should be checking out.
Okay, well, this was something that debuted. Well, actually, the idea of Three Jokers goes back to some stuff Grant Morrison had been doing on Batman, around Batman RIP, that the Joker has different personas that appear. And if we look historically, there have been three different Jokers. There was the Joker of the Golden Age, the Joker of the Silver Age, and then the modern age Joker, which is approximately around the Killing Joke. Mm-hmm. So it stems from that. It stems from something that I think Grant Morrison had put his finger on in terms of the persona, and he was trying to introduce a new persona that didn't quite take, if I remember correctly. Then you go through the New 52 Justice League run, and if I'm right, I think Jeff Johns was on the majority of that run, if not the entire run. And at one point, Batman becomes Bat God, to the delight of all of his fans. You know, they were so happy about that one. He gets into the Mobius chair, and he with the Mobius chair, we all know he should be able to answer the question, who is the Joker? Who is he? What does he get? He gets the question answered with, which one? He's like, what do you mean, which one? How many are there? There are three of them. And of course, fandom went crazy. There are three Jokers. There are three Jokers. And so that led to what we have here, this storyline where it's going to resolve the whole idea of the three Jokers. So when you open up these pages and treat yourself to what's being written and lavishly drawn, it's answering that question that was posed back in the Justice League run by Jeff.
Well, that's a good thing to know, that this is where it comes from. It's kind of a very long stemming thing to sort of go back to. And the fact that there's any interest in something like that, and especially when it seems like Jason Fabak is drawing the same Joker three times.
Pretty much, just like, different outfits.
The original Joker, I don't know if your team will correct me if I'm wrong. The original Joker looks one way, and then the what's the name? The golden later, the one later, the classic one that we know, looks way different. More like the one you see in the beginning of the Batman TV show, that little cartoon. And then
best Joker ever, Cesar Romero.
The four Jokers. And then you also have the one that Neil Adams drew, and even Marshall Rogers, that sort of brought the Joker back to us, his killing, his murderous sort of thing, which would be Englehart. When Englehart was doing it, he was trying to get back to that Joker, and the same with Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil, but they went a different way, saying that he's kind of, his face, he can't stop smiling, so he's kind of messed up. So I don't know. It's kind of we kind of just talked about a multiverse sort of thing. Now we get into another thing, but it is under the byline of Jeff Johns, so there's gonna be interest. And his last thing was, huge. So it's like, if this is going to be his exit strategy, where they're like, we'll give you one more and then we're out. You're out, because we can't even afford to do the Grant Morrison Arkham Asylum sequel. Like, everybody's got to, these big contracts got to go. All that stuff video did's got to go. So John, take what you can get right now. Fire sale.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the original Joker was a gangster.
Yeah.
He wasn't a homicidal maniac. He was a gangster. He had no problem killing people, okay? But he was a gangster at the end of the day. And then you get to the Silver Age, and he's a gangster, but he's more like a caper. I'm going to try to pull it off with these gimmicks and so on and so forth. Then he gets back to, then you get him back to that original Golden Age thing where he's a gangster. but about killing, like after the modern Joker is like a homicidal maniac. I'm just killing people. There's not a whole bunch of reason to it. I'm not really in it for the money anymore. And, but I'm just, at the end of the day.
Okay.
And that tilts back and forth until, next thing you know, he's trying to kill I'm trying to kill people so they can get in on the joke. And like, what the hell is that? There's no money in that. But it's, this is one of the criticisms I had of Jason Fabok, and I like Jason Fabok's art. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I never thought Jason Fabok was an artist who, if Jason Fabok was an artist, like in the 70s, he'd be transformative in terms of what he's doing right there. Now, I was like, you've got some incredibly appealing visuals, but there's just nothing that there needs like a little bit more. There's nothing to really pull you over the hump that makes you, oh man, I hate to say it. There's nothing that he's doing that makes him special. His art looks great, but there's nothing special about it. And then he's not been attached to any major story where his art has been matched to this story. And you're like, oh, wow, great art, great story. Here, I was thinking, okay, finally, he's got a chance where he can match those visuals, to the story. And I don't want to give away the story. I don't want to give away the story, in the slightest, but I'm looking at, one of the criticisms you said is like the Jokers look the same. The outfits look different, but the Jokers look the same. And this is what I was talking about with his art, where, okay, we should be able to look, and without the clothing, we should be able to see that's the Golden Age Joker, that's this Joker, that's Joker, because of the way that you're rendering them. Not like they're all, like they're triplets, like they're all the same, and the only way you can tell them differently is the clothing, but that the clothing is different and the Jokers are different. There's three of them, and they're three different Jokers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, the hard part with his art, and that's what I saw when, in that prelude story to Doomsday Clock, is that, as it's hard to say this because you can look at Gary Frank and say, oh, Gary Frank is a good artist. We've known him from the Hulk and this, that, and the other, and that he has his flair in different ways as far as his storytelling. And then we have Jason, who's adequate, but it's hard to say, see a difference between him and then what Tony Daniels is doing, right? So it's like, is there any difference? It's like, is this actually a different artist? And I've seen him in the interviews, so he is a different guy. But it's like, it's hard to say when there's so many people that are in that school of, not Finch, because Finch has a style, but in that sort of realm where he's like the Jim Lee, but not Jim Lee. You can tell the flair and difference, but it's just like, it's kind of like this stuff, but it's not his own thing. It's kind of hard to say, but I would agree. I would agree as far as this, but he gets a lot of work, and I guess giving people what they want.
Well, Tony Daniel, along the same lines, Tony Daniel, I think, has a very appealing style, but I just don't find anything. You look at his stuff. Is this guy going to be like I don't see this. He could probably still be working, but I always look for somebody who punches through, like a Neil Adams, okay? Even like Brian Boland, where this guy comes over here and the covers he's doing now, guys are looking to scoop these things up because of the art or because of the way that he was able to render, Wonder Woman on this cover or Zatanna on these covers, along that line. And it just doesn't strike that way. Not even like, like guys like J. Scott Campbell, where they're known for drawing he's known for drawing his chick covers, and people really like it. And it's not that the art isn't good. It's not that the art isn't solid. It's definitely serviceable. It's just not I guess the best example I could give someone like Alex Ross. Well, I know I'm a big fan of Alex Ross's work. I love Alex Ross's work. Mm-hmm. He doesn't necessarily draw like hot chicks or anything of that nature. To be quite honest, some of the times he draws a woman, I'm like, wow, that's the ugliest man I've seen in a wig in some time. Okay, so not everything that he does is perfect, but Alex Ross is a fantastic painter, a fantastic artist. And when he's on, like if you saw his covers, the covers he's done on Captain America, the covers he's done on Immortal Hulk, there's some really good stuff. It's excellent. Okay, it's excellent. And but this is Alex Ross into like his, I mean, digging Alex Ross from back in the 1990s. So Alex Ross is going into his third decade of, doing this type of stuff and can still command an audience because of that mastery of his craft at the end of the day. I don't necessarily see these guys in the same boat because even though again, they got some top art, there's nothing, again, it hasn't been attached to something special, and I don't see anything special. I don't see anything special, anything unique in it. And that's not to say it's not good art, but something that makes it stand out that much more. When Alex Ross came on the scene and did Marvels, and especially with Kingdom Come, that photorealistic art and was painted, that was some groundbreaking stuff at the end of the day. Guys weren't doing that. It was a totally different way to look at comics. He had the style that was rendered. Now you see these in looking at Fadebox over here, and this for him should be a really big deal. Okay, this should be like a really big deal. This is a big storyline, and you would want to come over here. Okay, I can do this. I can do like the superhero stuff, no problem. Let me come over here and really, really, let me really punch it on this one. And from what I've seen, like again, really, beautiful looking stuff at the end of the day. But in comics, not special.
Yeah, I mean, this is what people kind of disliked in Marvel for what would be considered a house style, even though in DC, like they would say, DC in the 50s had a house style, but at the same time, as far as being elegant artists, they didn't really have, none of these guys drew the same. Whereas now you can see it's kind of, that's the thing. Some of these guys have some Brian Boland in it, have a lot of Jim Lee and Brian Boland kind of married together, but then they can't stretch the way a Brian Boland would. If you would say the few times we've seen him draw a comic book, you can see you'd want it more, you'd want it monthly if you could, that sort of thing. I mean, even on the instance of that close-up of the Man of Steel of that John Byrne did of the S. Even for that, the Byrne was like, can we get Brian Boland to do that cover? And they're like, no, we paid. He didn't say this, but they say we made good money for you. We want a Byrne cover. We got a ton of these. Those pre-crisis Brian Boland covers were like really like amazing, kind of hurt you in opening the book sometimes. Like, oh, look at Super Clark Kent, and the other side of his face is this robot thing. So I gotta buy this. It's like, oh well, where is that scene? At least let me see that scene.
Yep, yeah. That was hard. On some of the Superman books, I think a lot of people felt like it was bait and switch. Like, oh wow, and then you open it up, they're like, who? Who? That's not because of the same artist.
Yeah. But I guess it could be, with John's going, come on, they're gonna drag him back to DC at some point, but we might not see him for a little while, so maybe you guys can check it out and see what John's is doing right now, because this is his this is him taking back a little bit of the Joker, since Scott Snyder's kind of taken him and done 3 million Jokers and the Batman Who Laughs and all this other craziness. So I guess Johns is taking a little bit of the Joker for himself. So,
well, I think it's official now with Jeff Johns. Well, Jeff Johns is probably going to be one of the premier writers in comics as long as he wants to write comics. He's got enough. He's got hits. He's got misses, but his hits just outweigh the misses at the end of the day. And he's also got one of the things that I think a lot of these guys no longer have, and that's a good working knowledge of the characters he's doing, especially the DC stuff. The Marvel stuff didn't really hit as well with me, but he knows the DC characters. It's very apparent the ones that he has an affinity for, and that's going to be very helpful because it's going to keep those characters alive, and you need that type of driving force when you're working with comics. You really need the guys who have read the stuff from before, and they really dig those characters. Like, oh, I grew up with leaders of superheroes. Like, no, Phantom Girl would never do that. That's not her character. Guys who are still willing to get into those type of discussions. Going a little bit of a jaunt here, where I was at a con waiting to get a signature from Ed McGuinness, and I must have waited like 3 minutes, 3, 4 minutes. There was nobody, there was no line. There was no line. But I waited 3 or 4 minutes because Ed McGuinness and a friend of his were in this conversation about like superpowers or like speed of light. And they were like really hashing this thing out back and forth. Like, no, you can't do that. He was like, well, why can't? He's like, no, because you can't do it. You can't, that's just not it just doesn't go like that at the end of the day. And I'm listening to them. And again, grown men, but these guys, when they were talking, they reminded me of the schoolyard conversations that you would have as to who could beat who's going to win, Superman or the greatest American hero? Superman. No, you don't understand. The greatest American hero, he can go into the fifth dimension. He's like, what are you talking about? Superman went into the Phantom Zone and came back, this type of stuff. And it's pretty much, it used to be the person with the better knowledge won that. Yeah. Because the person who had read more, understood the character, that's the person who was going to win those type of arguments. So that's where I would see someone like Jeff Johns, where, okay, he understands these characters. Okay, he understands. He may not always give us the best, because I was reading his, sweet grace, his Shazam. That Shazam series, that's heartbreaking. Because I read that and I'm like, man, this is so not Captain Marvel, and I know he knows who that character is, because there's nobody who can write the Legion or any of the stuff that I've seen him do with Superman and then come back and Captain Marvel is just so discordant. It's just like, wow, along those lines. But hey, he's going to be able to do what he wants, he's going to be able to do what he wants for a very long time, especially as DC Comics. That's what he decided he was going to make his bones at the end of the day. Oh, but this story, this story we will see what in terms of what it has in terms of legs.
Outside of the group books, has he done a stint on Batman? I can't remember, outside of the crossovers and events. I know that I guess it was that thing when the Flash comes back, but it hasn't been like a full-on Batman story or Batman run.
No, I mean the biggest stuff. At first, I thought he had a thing, like he was like kind of like one of those guys, like, I don't want to deal with Batman, this type of stuff. But because the earliest thing I remember with him and Batman was him having Hal Jordan knock, deck Batman and Guy Gardner screaming "one punch," getting a little bit back that way. So I didn't remember too much. More than that.
I just thought of it as those year one, whatever those Earth One books, or whatever those things were. Those graphic novels that he did, where he
did do that. He did Batman Earth One. He did that. I'm thinking of Batman canon.
Yeah, besides this sort of special stuff, yeah. It's weird.
I don't think he's ever had a run. I don't think he's ever had a run on I don't think he's ever had a run on Batman that I know of. I know that he was blamed for Batman running off of Batman versus Superman. They said that he was the reason why Ben Affleck left.
Oh yeah,
that's what I'm hearing.
Oh,
that that type of stuff. But then I suppose he's also the reason why. What's his name? Ray. Fisher. Yeah, he's also the reason why Ray Fisher left, supposedly, or at least he was trying to school Ray Fisher, and Ray Fisher was like, "Don't tell me what to do."
While he's crying. Well, I don't know, but I mean, for me, with Johns, there's some things left on the table. I think, well, it's different. There's a different Jeff Johns now. The guys right now isn't really the one that I first met. He sort of had like the change. No, I guess Shooter stayed the same sort of writer, but he kind of pushed it even more. But the guy who did the Flash, and he did Hawkman, and he did a Theme miniseries and a couple things. There's something about that was going back to like what was kind of hot about the 80s, like the stuff you'd see from anyone that was big, as far as even Burns, Simonson, Marv Wolfman, and Claremont on X-Men. It felt like he was doing that, but in the 2000s, like something similar, monthly comic books with long, subplots that would lead to big stories and all that sort of stuff, and keeping the hero part, keeping that hero like really in focus. And then I would say the Infinite Crisis happened, and he was like, let's get into the darker side of these guys. I've been wanting to do that. Okay, Batman, of course, didn't know about this. We had the mind wipe Batman, and there was a big fight, and all this other, and they hate each other, and this. I'm like, no, no, but he's kept the fame. It's one of the things that this post image, these with the hot writers have kept their their steam. Like they've been, they haven't really lost any steam. Like most of the time we've had hot writers that at some point they just fall off the face of the earth. There's Englehart and Mark Wolfman. Like there's I can't really say Claremont because he was on the X-Men. There wasn't anything else outside of X-Men that did well. So the ride of the X-Men is just one big thing for him. But there's a lot of people that come get hot. Obviously, Alan Morris sort of stayed hot, but at the same, because he's kept himself jumping in and out of comic books. But then there's other people that pop up, like Devin Grayson, people that come and go. So it's kind of interesting to see these guys. They're still considered the top guys, whereas most of the time the bloom is off the rose. And they're like, this guy is, what happened? Or I joke of 80s Englehart is not as good as the 70s one.
And on that note,
we're spinning out.
Go. Oh, yeah. Go buy out 3 Jokers. Tell us what you think.
Okay. All right. Let's cancel that.